Hi, it's Neil Shawnee here on your entertainment news. I'm with a man that really doesn't need any introduction, of course. He's the golden voice of radio, and that's the title of his brand new exclusive book. Remember, though, David?
Yes, remember, Neil, if you miss it, you miss out.
Don't miss David today on your entertainment news. And I think that was as much part of the brand that you had, you know, because you've got a very distinctive voice. I mean, to me, you know, I know you straight away whenever I hear you on the radio. But looking back at that period for you, you are now, all of those Radio 1 DJs, particularly the daytime ones, are superstars. I mean, you're bigger than some of the pop records you're playing, you know, because when you went to do stuff, like you talk about opening stores and, you know, doing nightclub appearances, it's you that's driving the audience in. That must have been confusing for the BBC.
You wouldn't get that now because there's so much radio, and of course there are superstar DJs. I mean, there are people like Chris Evans and Steve Wright.
He's probably the last one, though.
Yeah, probably the last ones. Yeah. On the cover of the book, there are 11. They were all household names. Yeah. There was Emperor Roscoe, for example, who was the first American DJ. Yeah. And I'll do my Roscoe impression, if you like. Would you like that?
I remember it. Yeah.
My, have mercy, baby, I'm gonna blow your mind.
Yeah, I remember.
Excuse me, murders your throat.
Yeah.
And you know, the first time he did it, the newsreader came on and said in a very formal voice, I'm gonna blow your mind, baby. And the newsreader said, and now the news in English. Isn't that wonderful? And then there was Fluff Freeman, of course, who was the first Australian. Yeah. Greetings, pop pickers, not off.
But he was great, though, wasn't he? He's another one. It was just, I think this is the thing, you all had your own individual personalities, and it's like anything, you tune into the ones that you liked, you know? I remember going on the bus to school, and Tony Blackburn was the breakfast show host, but I remember him saying, this is live across the nation from Broadcasting House in London, and I remember sitting on this bus in Dewsbury thinking, I wonder where that is. You know, like you were saying, it's like, where's Broadcasting House, you know? And wow.
Well, you know, talking about Fluff Freeman, he had a feature on his programme in the afternoon called Get It Off Your Chest, which was a way that people could write in, because in those days we wrote in, didn't we? Postcards and all of that.
And you just thought it was actually going to be read, didn't you?
It was, maybe a week later. You had to go through all the system and then finally get read out. But people, with this Get It Off Your Chest, people could write in and talk about things that really annoyed them. But some people took it the wrong way, and lots of women sent him their bras. So they were hanging all over. The first time I saw him in the studio, I walked in there, and all these bras were hanging up all over the studio. Now, that wouldn't happen today either, would it?
No. Well, somebody would take a picture, and then that would be turned into a crisis.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It'd be like,
sackable offence probably today.
Well, I think what's interesting is, you know, as I said, there's so many great people that were on the channel at the time, and the fun thing that comes from me is it was entertaining. You were all fun. You all had your own personalities. Yeah. I used to love the sort of backstabbing things you did as you crossed over. Everybody did it. But it was great, you know, because you weren't quite sure.
Well, Blackburn and I were the first people to have two daily 3-hour radio shows. He had 3 hours in the morning, I had 3 hours in the afternoon, and we decided to be rude about each other. So, you know, we would do, like, there's nothing he wouldn't do for me and nothing I wouldn't do for him, and that's how we go through life, doing nothing for each other. You know? And then he did an entire edition of Top of the Pops wearing a T-shirt saying, I hate David Hamilton, you know, which of course was wonderful publicity. Yeah. And people speculated, did they really hate each other, or did they get on? Well, actually, we were good friends. I was his best man when he got married for the second time, and you know, we were good pals. So it was like, but people wanted to think, that, you know, that we hated.
But it's kind of good for you. I mean, you mentioned Top of the Pops again. You know, that must have been thrilling, David, to be a host on there, because it's the #1 show, and we all sat on a Thursday night watching it, and you never really knew who was the host, because he didn't sometimes say in the Radio Times or whatever. So you'd turn up and you think, oh, it's those two or whatever. And the ones that I remember, you always had an exuberance. You always seemed like you wanted to be there. Whereas John Peel looked like he was, you know, and you kind of think, well, why don't they just get somebody that likes these then, you know? So that was
his style, wasn't it? And in a way, that's what made him different. Yeah. But I was very excited to be there, and something that, you know, I mean, again, having watched it for so many years, to be at the first show, really nervous. But the thing that struck me about it the first time I walked into the studio was how small the set was. Of course, with clever direction, it looked a lot bigger. But it was very small, probably about 100 teenagers who were just went from one set to another, you know, and as David Essex finished his number over here, floor manager would herd them over to this way, and then Rod Stewart would be there doing his song, you know. And the other thing about it was, you know, nowadays you hear about people earning a lot of money with the BBC. For doing Top of the Pops, I never earned £100. I think the most I ever got was about 90 quid. And I remember we used to record it on a Wednesday night, and afterwards I used to do a disco in a pub in the Old Kent Road called the Dun Cow, which is now a dentist surgery, funnily enough. And I probably got about 3 times as much for working to 200 people in a pub in the Old Kent Road as I got for doing a national television programme watched by 15 million. Wow. But of course, the TV show gave you the shop window for the gigs. It's the exposure,
isn't it? You know. Yeah. What were the acts that you remember that you liked on the show? Because I mean, I always thought it was. It must have been so exciting for you as the host to be close to some of these, you know, which are now icons like Rod, as you say, and people like that.
Do you know the pop star I was most excited to meet? I think you'd be quite surprised.
Go on.
Roy Orbison.
Oh, I loved Roy Orbison, yeah.
And I tell you why. One of the first records I bought was Only the Lonely by Roy Orbison. And I used to play it on my father's radiogram. There were radiograms. And my father said to me, why are you playing the same record over and over again? And I said, because it's fantastic. That's what we did then. We got a record, we loved it.
Wore it out.
And wore it out. You play it over and over on an old 78. Yeah. And so now suddenly, like we're sitting in this studio, and sitting opposite me is the Big O. And he's got the shades on, you know. I thought, this man has been a star all my lifetime. Yeah. And finally, I've actually got to meet the Big O. He was a lovely. I did one of the last television interviews with him, and he died not long afterwards. And when he died, a clip of our interview was actually shown on the news at 10. Wow. And for me, you know, I had interviewed, you know, Elton John, Rod Stewart, I mean, loads of the greats, and compared the Beatles, compared the Rolling Stones in concert.